Okay, guys. All right, so this is part 2 of the podcast. Part 1 is over on Intellic's page. It's really awesome. We talked about, digital marketing, Industry 4.0.
Yep.
Creating value out of thin air.
The zero-sum. Life is not a zero-sum game.
Yeah. How integrators think we're crazy for not calling them competitors, but really how we're trying to change the industry and build a community. And yeah, it's just amazing. So make sure to catch that part 1 over on Intellic. We'll link that below. This is part 2, and I was just about to tell my story about, you talked about how you gave that project to your, who would ostensibly be your competitor, and you just gave them that project without expectation of anything in return. But the way I like to look at...
We gave them the client. We actually worked with that client for 2 years. We built their enterprise infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
We built their whole enterprise MES system. And then we brought, in phase 3, I introduced them to that integrator in phase 2. We brought them in phase 3, and we phased ourselves out.
Wow.
But during the process of phase 1 and phase 2, we had to convince that integrator, A, to become an Ignition house, and B, train up their staff so that they could support this customer. And we got nothing out of that. I mean, there was no quid pro quo. There was nothing like that. I mean, it was...
So if you guys are a listener of the Zack Scriven podcast, I know you guys are going to enjoy that first half, but I'm diving right into the story really of how I saw content creation specifically within the industrial automation community. And when I see other content creators like, Dave Griffith and Alex Marcy from Corso Systems, and, Sean Terrell, Jim Gavin, who's posting videos now I've been talking to. Like, I don't see that as a threat. I actually see that as a good thing. That's what I want to do. Like Elon Musk, he doesn't see other electric car companies as competitors. His whole goal was to accelerate the advent of, sustainable transport, right? My whole goal was not to become a billionaire with Zack Scriven Media and have all the chips to myself. My whole goal was to accelerate the advent of digital content creation within the industrial automation industry, to move the industry forward faster. And the analogy that I like to use is within consumer tech YouTubers. Much more common throughout YouTube and on the internet. Guys like MKBHD, which I'm sure we've all seen, Linus Tech Tips, you name it.
Love Linus. Love Linus.
Right.
Shout out to Linus. Please watch the podcast. I love Linus Tech Tips.
Right. So you don't see them fighting, right? You actually see them collaborating. Even like kind of more of the cinematic content creators like Peter McKinnon, Casey Neistat, you see them all collaborating with people in their niche. Sean Cannell, Roberto Blake, people within the video content niche, they're collaborating. They don't see each other as competitors. This is something I really see on LinkedIn. That's really why I love LinkedIn is, even if someone else is a digital marketing guru, they don't see me as a competitor. They collaborate. They drop a comment,
Well, Joe Rogan is a perfect example, right? I mean, the Joe Rogan experience it's a major moneymaker for him, right? It's one of YouTube's most popular streams and podcasts.
Yeah, I love it.
He has other YouTube streamers and podcasters on his show all the time. I mean, he's promoting the competition on his own show. What should be his competition?
But it's not. So
right?
So it makes sense there. But so I really just took that concept and just applied it to industrial automation. Like you've applied that same philosophy to integration, and distributor, and end users, executives, integration. Industry 4.0, it's that same digital transformation, it's that same mindset shift, but for a digital content creation perspective.
So there are actually a couple of guys that I want to give shout outs to.
Let's do it. Okay. Let's hear them.
So there are two people that I've talked to in depth quite a bit. So Justin Dean, and
he's a great,
and this guy John McKeon, who I've had a lot of conversations with over the last week or so. And Justin comments on a lot of our content, but one of the things that I want to say is that until we started doing this, I really see our digital marketing, and one of the things we talk about in our board meetings here, when the executive leadership team is asking me, why is it we should be investing in this? And I say, it's because we're getting the message out, right? There's no way that we can't help everyone who needs our help. Okay, there's no way we can help everyone who needs our help. That is, manufacturers who want to digitally transform so that they can be sustainable over the long run in a digital economy.
Using Communication 3.0.
Using Communication 3.0, right. So we can't possibly help them all, okay? So we need to build an army of like-minded thinkers who are going to be able to force multiply. Right. So that's what I say. I want to get the message out. But there are two people I definitely want to give so John McKeon and Justin Dean are two people that I knew of Justin actually before we started doing this, but I didn't know him personally, and I certainly didn't know what his values were or anything like that. But Justin and John are two people who I've been able to interact with extensively, and what I've learned about them is that all these things that I've been putting up on the board and architecting the integrator of the future, they have both said to me, listen, this is exactly how we've architected our companies, and we didn't know anyone else was doing it either. Like, what that I learned from that was that there are like-minded thinkers out there, and that given the right environment and with the right way of thinking, more than one person can come to the same natural conclusion, the natural evolution, without any outside influence. And so now we can take myself, Justin, John, and Dave and Sean, Alex and Sean and and Brandon and all
Dustin.
I mean, eventually we're gonna get to the point where it take us 20 minutes just to list off it. But we can take all those people that we've met, and we can force multiply in the market, which is really an incredibly rare opportunity. And imagine this: imagine if all of us created a consortium of our companies. Like we essentially created a consortium where not only were we sharing ideas, but we were sharing resources and technologies and marketing and advertising and administration. And that's not to say that we should do that. What I'm saying is that to me that looks like the next obvious step.
It's the ecosystem.
The next step for the ecosystem is that 4.0 consortium.
It's a system of systems integrators.
That's right. Exactly.
I just had this thought. I'm like, we should do a conference. We should do a 4.0 solutions conference or industry, whatever we want to call it, a community conference. Invite everyone and create content, create connections in person.
I'll tell you what.
We could do workshops.
I'll tell you what. If we
have a panel of LinkedIn creators.
If we get to 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, or
that'd be expensive,
or 1,000 followers on YouTube.
Okay.
Then we'll do it. We'll do it right smack in the middle of the country or something.
We actually have a little race going on. I think that Intellic's YouTube channel might actually be Zack Scriven Media's YouTube channel to 1,000 subs. At the time, right now, you're at 208.
But it's a brand new channel.
I manage the YouTube channel, so it's kind of like I don't see it as a race, but Zack Scriven Media is at like 767, which I'm very blessed and thankful for. That's like up almost double since last year, since I started full time. And but I think where Intellic really excels is it's very focused content, right? Zack Scriven Media is kind of this big, encompassing, including the podcast, including a little bit of tech, a little bit of digital marketing and media, conferences and events, but you know your niche. And it's been exciting to see the growth. But yeah, 1,000 YouTube subs, we could do it. Yeah,
if we do 1,000 YouTube subs or 10,000 on LinkedIn, I think we'll get to 10,000 on LinkedIn faster.
Okay.
Because we've had videos that have done.
We're actually at the equal ratio right now.
Because we get a lot more. We get a lot more views on LinkedIn
because that's where it goes viral on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it goes viral on LinkedIn because it's professional content. But interestingly, a lot of the inbound interest that comes into our companies, both 4.0 and Intellic, it's what they saw on YouTube. So the combination
SEO,
the combination of
let's talk about that.
Engaging, so really the approach, the digital marketing.
LinkedIn versus YouTube.
So the combination of engaging with the community on LinkedIn in real time, but cataloging everything on YouTube, like as our history, is a great combination. Right. Because LinkedIn gets the immediate interaction with the community, and YouTube is what's driving searches. So when people are searching for
what is IIoT?
Yeah, what is IIoT, or I'm looking for
digital factory.
Yeah, how do I use this? They're asking basically the questions that our videos ask and answer. Then they're getting driven. They're getting driven to us, and I really encourage more people. I mean, is this expensive to do? Yes, it's expensive to do. There's no question about it, and I totally understand why it is that other. I totally understand why people who think zero sum don't do it, but people like Justin Dean and John and the other like-minded thinkers.
I think that they should just start. I think that they should grab their phone and start creating content.
That's right.
You don't need to hire Zack Scriven Media and have a full production crew come in. You can work your way up to that point, but there's always more space for this community to grow. But
I will say it's worth every penny. I want
to. Thank
you. While I say is it expensive, it is, but it is literally worth every penny. If I had to choose between, we go to maybe 8 or 10 conferences a year, and ICC by far is the best conference that we attend every year. But 8 or 10 conferences a year. If I had to not go to 4 of those so that I could fund the digital media, I would easily, with a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going to 8 or 10 conferences a year, go to 3 or 4 of them, and then start investing in digital content.
Start investing in more larger SD cards.
So there's a B camera over there that.
Yeah, I'm actually excited how that will come out. Yeah. But we'll just go with the A camera for here on
You should get yourself a nice little thingy over here. You'll never guess how much it costs.
$120.
Yeah, it's like $120. That's it.
It looks beautiful, man.
Yeah, thank you. I like it.
So, what's the future look like, man?
Well, next week, the immediate future is I jump on a plane tomorrow morning and head out to Florida. Next week is the ARC advisory show in Orlando. Still debating whether I'm actually going to attend the show during the week, but I will be at the Ignition IIoT symposium on Friday in Orlando.
I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, so they're doing an IIoT symposium. So
invite only.
I'm not sure actually how that worked. They did invite us. I just don't know if it was. No, I seriously doubt it. I mean, generally they don't do the user groups are invite only normally, but so I'll be out in Orlando next week. Tentatively, I'm going to be in the New York office the following week, but I think I may go out to LA and we'll shoot some more content, and then
I'm excited for that.
We're really busy with projects very, very busy with projects right now. We're trying to bring on additional engineers. Actually, it's funny. We're supposed to shoot a video where we can post on LinkedIn that we're hiring, and we're looking for like-minded people to join our team, but we
just don't even need to because people are reaching out.
Yeah, they're reaching out. Yeah, we actually just interviewed someone today that came through all the digital media, and that went great. He's exactly just like us. So,
what would you say to someone who says, Walker, you're a natural on camera, like I can't be that good as you? What would you say to that person?
I'm only a natural on camera because I'm being the real me, and there's someone out there who loves talking to you. So get in front of the camera and just be yourself.
Right.
I mean, literally, the reason people think I'm good in front of the camera is because I'm getting in front of the camera and I'm being myself. Like I'm literally, this is the authenticity. I'm being as authentic as I humanly can. I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. My kids watch our content all the time, and they give you way more credit than they give me. They're like, "Oh, Zach does such a good job with the editing and all." I love my son Hayden. I love the captions or the thumbnails that he's using, and it makes me want to watch the video. And Dad, you're okay.
Well, your dad, so they should be harder on you. Oh.
Yeah, the answer is just be yourself in front of the camera. Be as authentic as humanly possible. And here's why. It's why it's one of our core values. Not being yourself requires energy.
Yeah.
And that energy, using that energy to not be yourself, to project something you are not, takes away from your message. It takes away, it's energy you should be applying to communicating your message.
Yeah, and also one thing is like, I'm behind the camera, and we almost forget about the camera, and you're just like as if you were teaching me, and that's one of the things. It's funny you mentioned in the first half of the podcast was you know, these days are extremely exhausting for you, and for me it's quite the opposite. These days are actually really easy. I just set the camera up, hit record, and I just learn. Actually, I get to learn a lot while you're teaching, you know, in real time. I'm lucky I get to see it in 3D. You guys are limited to 2D screen, yeah. But one day maybe that'll change, and Zack Scriven Media will be at the leading forefront of the virtual reality content creation. But then after I leave, then my work begins, and then, you know, you go back to.
And there is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of work that you put into the editing and getting everything posted. I mean, the fact that you travel all over the world, and you're able still to get everything, yeah. Posted when it's supposed to be posted.
This week was tough with Dubai, and I was just jet lagged like crazy.
And so how did the show go?
So it went really well.
Were you glad that you took the trip out there?
I'm very glad I took the trip out there. Aviva, the entire team there was very welcoming, and they were embracing of what it is that I was doing. I mean, even the CEO of Aviva, he reached out and talked to me, and he's like, "Oh, you're the YouTube star," and that was cool. And I got a couple key interviews, like with Simon. And
how was your speech received? So when you posted that video, we didn't really get to see how that was received. But yeah. What type of conversations did that spark up after you had that? Yeah.
So a lot of people, like Vishal, he's the head of operation and controls at Aviva. I've worked with him in previous conferences and stuff, and he was actually the one who came up with the idea. I was actually going to mic him up while he was giving his, 30-minute breakout session, and then that way I could just record that, post that, just to share with the world. They recorded the keynote and stuff, and that was in the big area, but then they had a breakout session that wasn't recorded. But, that's what I do. I go and I record content that I think should be shared with the world. And it was actually his idea to say, "Oh, well, why don't you come up and say a few things?" So I was like, "All right, yeah, that'd be great." So I mic'd myself up, and I went up there, and he said I did a really great job afterwards. He's like, "Oh, wow, for not preparing, like you crushed it." And he actually, and if you guys haven't seen it, I'd recommend checking it out. It'd be awesome.
Well, you touched on all the important elements about digital transformation and IoT and the changing winds of the industry. You touched on all the key elements.
What I ultimately loved about that speech, and I don't know what gave me the idea to do it that way, but it really, I wanted to share my story, but I didn't want to be like, "Oh, look at me." I'm like, how does my story relate to what's happening in the industry? How can I use this opportunity to not boost myself up, but to boost the community up? How can I give the most value for someone spending 4 minutes of their time, 5 minutes of their time listening to me, talk about my story of, how I quit my job, how I, was a control system engineer, doing SCADA in the womb, and, my dad worked at Wonderware, and my mom started a system integrator, and, how can I actually relate that? And it's funny because it's actually a mirror. It's a very, that's why I love the digital transformation of communication and media and digital marketing, how it just maps directly over to industry. And I've kind of been fortunate enough to, bridge that gap and make that connection for people like you, people that, we've name dropped 100 times already in this podcast.
Well, let me ask you this.
So that's ultimately how it was received. I mean, there was other people that reached out to me and talked to me. And, I got to say the video did really well on YouTube, actually. It didn't go super viral on LinkedIn. It got very well. A lot of my LinkedIn fam were very proud of you. Wow.
But the difference is your LinkedIn following is an eclectic group, right? You have people who fall in the technical vertical. You have people who are just influencers. So I wouldn't expect it to take off as much as whereas our following, Intellic's following, is exclusively technical people, and they would they probably what
were we gonna say?
Well, so Flow sponsored you to go out there. So let me ask you this. So the whole sponsorship, obviously you wear the hats and all that thing.
Funny story, I actually left the hat in the business class seat.
When out of Madrid, on Madrid back, you were in business, right?
Luckily, I didn't lose it on the way there because I would feel real dumb.
So how often do people ask when you're wearing a hat, how often do people ask?
More, I think it happens probably more often than people say. But there was a couple people that came up to me and said, "I recognized you because of your hat." And they're like, "Oh, so like, what gave you this idea to wear someone's hat?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I like wearing a hat." And you know, like Quentin Allums, you know, the man with the hat himself, he was an inspiration. You know, for those of you guys that don't know, he's one of the forefront LinkedIn influencers who had this black, almost like cowboy hat, right? And it was just an iconic brand anchor. And someone at Aviva was like, "I recognized you because of the hat. It was your brand anchor."
Well, you know, what's funny is, so Flow, for those of you who don't know who Flow Software is, they're basically a software company based in South Africa. And they developed a platform. It's actually an amazing platform. And that they're really just now getting their global footprint, right? Yeah. They're really well known in Africa, but they opened an office in Austin. We're here in Dallas, but they opened an office in Austin. They're really spreading out their wings here in the States, and their goal over the next year is to really to get more, broaden their install base here in the United States. But they basically developed this platform that I mean, it's an analytics and reporting platform that basically can consume HDA data, so that is historical data from databases, lots of different connectors.
They connect to Wonderware, Rockwell, Ignition,
MQTT, Sparkplug-B, yep, Canary Labs, Historian, but they support MQTT. They connect to Ignition.
By the way, I'm not paying him for this.
Yeah. Well, no, I love the platform. I mean, right. So we're using it. What my point here is we're using Flow in a pilot right now, actually here in Dallas, in a project we have here in Dallas, and we're using Flow for two reasons. Number one, we're creating all of the OEE metrics using Flow. We're not using Ignition to do any of the MES calculations. We're using Flow to do that. Number two, we're using Flow to consume information from
So it publishes the OE values back to the MQTT broker, or
yes. So right. So what we're doing is we're consuming Ignition tags, and then from Ignition consuming Flow. But we're also using Flow's HTML5 reporting tools for all the dashboards in this instance. But what I really like, the most impressive part of Flow, I really like I like it as a tool, but you know, to do there's really two things that make Flow amazing. Number one, I can have availability, quality, performance, and OEE calculations and they call them measures, so have them as measures, right? What Flow will allow you to do is to predict what the future values should be based on past performance in the chart. So you can...
It does that?
Yeah, it does. So it can predict future performance based on, per future values based on past performance. So it can do predictive analytics natively. Right, that's the first thing. The second thing is it natively integrates with Slack, so you can generate reports, and Flow will publish those reports into a Slack channel. So you could have a Slack channel for your executives where you're interacting with a report in real time, all 5 of the executives. I mean, and when I was telling Graham when he originally showed us this platform a year and a half or whatever it was ago, I told him and like that's what makes you unique in the market, and that's where the value is. But about the hat, so we're doing this trial. We didn't tell the customer we were piloting Flow.
No.
Okay, so we're doing Flow, and when I said to the customer after we did the presentation, and I showed him the Flow dashboards, the first thing he said to me was, "Hey, that's that guy who does your digital media. He wears their hat, right?" And I said, "Yeah."
Shut up.
Swear to God. I'm dead serious. Yeah, and that actually was just last week.
Well. It's hard to believe, but it's actually not that hard to believe because 25,000 people saw it in just one video. It actually had nothing to do about Flow, but you'd be surprised. You know, it takes 7 digital touches for someone to actually recognize your logo. And over the course of Instagram and several videos of going to Madrid and Dubai, and there's still more content that I want to put out with the Flow hat. But up to date, it was 100,000 people saw that logo on that hat. And you know, funny story is, you know, Graham also sponsored me to go. You keep looking at you.
Well,
we'll wrap this up soon. But
no, not at all. There's another integrator here in Dallas that we support that we're training them. We're training them how to use Ignition, and he needs some help real quick. Let me.
Okay.
let me send this message out real quick.
So I think the biggest, so 100,000 people saw me wearing that hat, and for what he paid, it's a really good CPM. It didn't cover my whole Dubai trip. I'm hoping in my future travels I can work with enough sponsors and get enough influence that I can cover those trips and not be coming out of pocket. But I'm building up my company right now. I'm building up my influence, and I'm working the grind. It's going to take 2 to 5 years for that entrepreneurship grind to really pay off. But he sponsored me to go to Rockwell Automation Fair too, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't pleased with the results. I didn't. I wore the Intellic hat. I wore the Conair engineering hat with Rafi, but I wore the Flow hat. But I didn't quite get the videos that I put out weren't quite what I was happy with. So I actually credited him back that for the Dubai trip. I said, this is what I was gonna seek out for sponsorship for Dubai, but I'm just gonna credit you back. And Dubai was obviously a lot more than just Philly, right?
What you ought to do is.
But he was for case in point, he was happy with the results.
For all of the people who sponsor you, and now your sponsorships are getting bigger. You have more and more people getting involved.
Right.
What you ought to, so you did an animated logo for 4.0 Solutions. You ought to do something like that for all of them, and in your videos, have that play, that animated logo that says sponsored by.
Yeah.
This content is sponsored by. In addition to just having them, because if you always work with us, right? So if you have Intellic as you just have that logo, you can just drop it in on anything, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Flow or any of the other.
I think to describe Flow in like 2 sentences is they work like they sponsored me to go to Dubai. So if you don't know what type of company they are, what kind of forward-thinking company they are, just think about that for a second. Right? They are on the leading edge of hip marketing. I mean, if you like Walker, you like Intellic, you like what he's doing and like what we're doing, then you're going to like Flow. You're going to like what they're doing, what kind of a forward-thinking company they are. Can't believe I said hip, but...
So this is the life of an integrator. I'm supporting someone right now through.
He called me the Casey Neistat of our industry, and
that's awesome. Man. It really is. What are your plans for February? So what are your?
I told Mary that I'm not traveling at all for business for February, and this is technically January 31st, so it is true. But I'm coming back. I'm actually flying tomorrow morning straight to LAX, then to Maui. Mary's working a trip to Maui.
Baller!
And so I'm flying with her on the plane that she's working on, but we'll have 24 hours layover, a much-needed vacation.
Okay.
I think this will actually be our first vacation without Zoe.
Oh, who's watching Zoe while you're gone?
Our family friend or her auntie. So that'll be cool.
One of the things that I would really like is...
It's our anniversary.
Is happy anniversary. 2 years, 3 years?
We've been dating for 4 years.
4 years. It's crazy because I met you before you were 21, and it's like just so, it's just weird now that you're like a dad and, a husband and all that kind of stuff.
Entrepreneur.
But what I would really like is, so one of the things that we're definitely going to be doing in February is soliciting more. I mean, we get a lot of feedback from the community, but I want to actively solicit from the community what the topics are that we should cover. In our digital content. We're definitely getting more technical this month. The stuff we shot today is more technical, so we're going to get more technical. I think people are starting to change the way they think and stuff. So I think we should do this again.
Yeah, I like this.
Yeah, I like this format, and I mean, kudos to the people who watched it all the way through.
Yeah, thank you guys. Well, till the next time, man.
Peace out. We got to come up with a...
Thank you guys for watching and listening to the Zack Scriven podcast with Walker Reynolds. And watching the Intellic first half of the podcast. So,
and I'll see you guys on the flip side.
Peace out.
However you do that.